So let's go ahead and talk today about the Los Angeles Rams, the team who so far through 3 games of the season, in my opinion, look like they have the best chance of not only dethroning the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the best team in the NFC, but they have a really good shot at taking a Super Bowl win against whoever comes out of the AFC and proving themselves as the best team in the NFL. Let's go ahead and start with what the defense is doing well. Statistically, in every single game, the Los Angeles Rams have had 3 sacks in each one of those games. And honestly, that's a number that I don't even think that they are necessarily happy with. I think Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, and the rest of that defense, especially led by someone like Raheem Morris, who has an aggressive play calling style and just leads an aggressive defense in general, they're going to be looking to boost that number even more than it looks like right now. But even with that being said, they still look like a top 5 defense at this given point. The statistics aren't necessarily going to be there. They are 25th in passing yards, and they are 11th in rushing yards in terms of yards allowed. But they still are 9th in points allowed. They are 11th in takeaways, and they just are a defense who is going to do those key things well throughout a given game, which is pressuring the quarterback and taking the ball away from the other team's offense. They're going to do those 2 key things a lot better than a lot of other teams are. And they've got a star at almost every level of the defense. They've got Jalen Ramsey, who can basically shut down any wide receiver in any given game. He's probably the closest thing to Deion Sanders that we've seen since Deion left the game. Aaron Donald is probably the closest thing we've seen to someone like Reggie White since Reggie White left the game. This defense just looks incredible, and they've got other stars like Darius Williams on that other corner position. They've got linebackers like Troy Reader and some other guys there, Leonard Floyd to rush the quarterback as well, to where this team defensively, even if they didn't have a good offense, they still would be a top 10 team in the NFL right now, just of how well this defense plays. Honestly, this past week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was probably the worst that this defense has played throughout the whole entire season, and they only gave up 24 points. They allowed only 35 rushing yards, and defensively, they just controlled what Tom Brady and the rest of that offense was doing. Now, Tom Brady didn't have Rob Gronkowski for a majority of that last game, but that's not necessarily something that really affects Tampa Bay's chances that much throughout a given game. And even if it did, I don't think really Rob Gronkowski would have changed much even if he was there. Because offensively, they could not get their footing. They could not, they couldn't run the ball. Like I said, they only had 35 rushing yards. And even though the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did not turn over the ball against the Los Angeles Rams, like I said, they just were not they didn't look like a good offense against LA. The last point I'll try to drive home to you as to why this Los Angeles Rams defense is as good as it is, as good as I think it is they are playing at as high of a level as they are, and they are playing at that high of a level while playing disciplined. They are third in the league in terms of defensive penalties. They don't give up a lot of penalties. They play, like I said, disciplined football, not only in the back end, but in the front end as well. And it just adds to the fact that this defense is really, really good. Now let's talk about the side of the ball that you guys actually care about, and that's the offensive side of the ball. And boy, does this Matthew Stafford-led offense just look incredible. They're averaging about 6.5 yards per play. I don't know where that ranks in terms of NFL rankings, but that's pretty good in my opinion. That's an average first down in 2 plays. They're 6th in passing yards. They are 27th in rushing yards, but when you're as good throwing the ball as this team is, you don't necessarily need to run the ball. They're kind of like the Buffalo Bills in terms of being able to just throw the run game away and be able to effectively pass the ball down the field without having to run it. They still are a team when, if Cam Akers comes back this season, which I don't think he is, but if he does, that just bolsters their team even better. And really the cream of this offense is in that wide receiver core. And the tight end, Tyler Higbee, is not too bad either. But when you're talking about the wide receivers, you're talking about Robert Woods. You're talking about Cooper Kupp. You're talking about 2 guys who are at the top of their game right now and at the top of being able to affect a game anytime they're on the field. Cooper Kupp has 5 touchdowns already in 3 games. Deshaun Jackson is that great third receiver who can stretch the defense still at 35 years old. And Van Jefferson is a good 4th wide receiver who is just a consistent player through and through. Now, one key factor with this Matthew Stafford situation that I kind of want to drive home is, and it's going to be a point that I don't know if necessarily makes sense, but it kind of makes sense in my head. So in Detroit, Matthew Stafford would be going through games. He'd get about halfway through his games, and they'd realize they need Matthew Stafford to throw the ball 20 to 30 times in the second half just to even have a chance to win. Now with the LA Rams, not only is some of those games going to go away because this defense is actually good, the offensive line has a chance to move the ball in the ground game, and the wide receivers can actually support him throughout the given game, but there's going to be games where Sean McVay, I think, just tells Matthew Stafford, hey, you're going to throw the ball 30 to 40 times in this game. And it's not going to really be an issue on either side because Sean McVay believes in Matthew Stafford, and I think Matthew Stafford actually believes in the offense and the defense that he's playing with. He believes in the defense to keep the score low for the other team. He believes in his offense to run up the score whenever they have the ball in their hands. This is why I think he's thrown one interception in 3 games. He's only been sacked 3 times in 3 games. He's playing at the highest level he has ever played as the quarterback for an NFL franchise. We see that in his completion percentage, which is higher than he's ever had in the NFL. We see that in his interception percentage, which is lower than he's ever had, except for a season where he only played 3 games. His quarterback rating is better than ever. His passer rating is better than ever. He just is playing at the highest level he can play at because I think mentally, it's obviously a better situation than what he was dealing with in Detroit. And I will be honest, going into this season, I did not necessarily think that substituting Jared Goff for Matthew Stafford was going to be as good of a exchange as it was. Because in my opinion, you got to the Super Bowl with Jared Goff. Jared Goff played in a really good system and played as a really good quarterback in a really good system. So I didn't necessarily believe that changing the quarterback would really make this system look even better than it did. But I have been proved completely wrong. The Matthew Stafford-led Los Angeles Rams are better than anything that Jared Goff was able to produce as a Los Angeles Ram. And we're seeing now that Jared Goff is in Detroit, the difference between what Matthew Stafford was able to do for that franchise and what he's going to be able to do going forward for the Los Angeles Rams with a team that can actually support him offensively and defensively, and a coaching staff that can actually get a team up to speed and have that team playing at the highest possible potential. So, honestly, I'm completely on the hype train for Matthew Stafford and the rest of this Los Angeles Rams team. They're already 3-0. They've beat 3 playoff teams from last season, including the team that won the Super Bowl last year. They do have a bit of a rough schedule ahead of them. They play in the NFC West, so they still have 2 games against the Cardinals, 2 games against the Seahawks, and 2 games against the 49ers ahead of them, including a couple games where they go to Green Bay, go to Baltimore, and a tough game where Tennessee is going to be a tough game no matter what. But I think this team's ready for the challenge. I don't think there's going to be a defense throughout this season that really necessarily challenges Sean McVay at the play calling level or Matthew Stafford at the quarterback level. And if that is happening where neither of those guys are getting challenged, that means that Cooper Kupp is going to go off. That means Robert Woods is going to go off. That means the running backs are going to have a good game. And that means the defense is just going to play loose and have a fun time out there like they always do. Aaron Donald is probably going to be in Defensive Player of the Year conversation by the end of the season again. Jalen Ramsey is going to be the best corner in the league again this year. And I'm just going to say it now. I think the LA Rams are going to go to the Super Bowl this year. They already beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I understand it's early in the season, but a win early in the season is a win early in the season. You can't blame them for winning early in the season. What I can do is put a lot of hype around this team and say that they're going to go to the Super Bowl and represent the NFC in the biggest game of the season and play in the Super Bowl in their own home stadium. With everything being said, that's going to be the video from me. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave a like. If you didn't, make sure you leave a dislike. Any feedback from you at this point is much appreciated. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.